As the legend goes, there was a native woman who was engaged to a wealthy Spaniard. The woman eventually gave birth to 2 sons out of wedlock. The mother was devoted to her kids, but she wanted her kids to have a father who was just as devoted. Since he was a criollo, he was afraid about what others would think if he were to take her as his wife. Eventually, she found out that he was set to marry a lady from high society. The native woman was devastated. She felt betrayed and became desperate. She was so desperate at the time that she took her 2 children to the riverbank of Lake Texcoco and drowned them. When she realized what she had done, guilt plagued her to the point that she ended up drowning herself as well. From that moment on, the cries of a woman are heard in the river where the event took place. The cries of a woman looking for her lost children. ¡Ay, mis hijos! ¿Dónde están mis hijos? Hello again. Thanks for joining me on the second episode of Cup of Joe with Joe. Joining me here today is my husband, Dave.
Hello.
He's going to be joining us in some of these episodes. So, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Fun fact about us is that one of our favorite things to do in our downtime is watch horror movies.
Yeah. I think we've been watching horror movies since we've been together, and even since before that, probably starting in high school. I think one of my favorite movies ever, even to this day, is Alien, the original, 1979. I think it's a very good movie. You got a strong female lead, and the special effects, they probably haven't aged that well, but compared to other movies today where the CGI and the bad special effects kind of breaks the immersion of the story, it still stands the test of time. And I'm excited that the Alien franchise is doing a lot better. Alien Romulus recently came out, 2024, and it broke records. I think opening night, it made one of the highest grossing opening nights for a horror movie in recent history. And it looks like they're in talks with Ridley Scott, the director of the original Alien, still making these films, and he's gonna come out with the series soon. So we're not sponsored by them, by the way. I just really like the movie franchise. So I just find the horror franchise, people think that horror is just meaningless blood, slashing, murders, and just as gory as it can be, but really there's more nuances to it, and that's what we like to see, kind of distract us from the real world craziness that's going on today. Seems like horror has become like the new fantasy where you can get lost in their world and kind of separate yourself from your current life and see how when you watch horror films and you go home, it's kind of a nice feeling going back home and realizing that your life is a lot better than the characters in these horror films.
Oh, for sure.
As opposed to seeing a feel-good movie where a dog dies or somebody, walks into a sunset with a newfound love and a perfect life, and you kind of go home and you're like, that's a little too real. I don't like seeing movies that are too real, that are too close to home. I like to see things that are a little bit more out there. And so I guess that's where our love for this genre comes from. And it's not just really horror, but also sci-fi. I'm a big fan of Stargate, Star Trek, Star Wars, and when you combine those two, sci-fi and horror, like Alien, you got a winning combo in my book. So, yeah.
Aside from the Alien franchise, we also really like Conjuring. I won't go into too much detail on the Conjuring franchise, but I mean, there's a love story, there's horror, there's
family activities.
So much fun.
Guitar playing.
Yeah. Elvis.
Hide and seek.
Yeah, and recently Conjuring franchise has even branched out to a Conjuring universe, and it now includes movies that it does not have the Warrens And one of those movies is La Llorona. And I really liked that movie. It was a bit different from the stories. It had a curse, and, she sees you, and she goes after your kids because, obviously she's been searching for her kids for the longest. And so, yeah, you're cursed, and you have to find your way out of that. So had a lot of interesting, topics in there, but I hadn't really thought about it for a long time. But this movie reminded me of when my parents would tell me to be a good girl, or La Llorona would come get you. I mean, I was practically a perfect child, so I did not get this reaction very often.
Sure.
But it's kind of funny thinking about it now. I mean, La Llorona was, or is, terrifying. Just imagine, you're walking outside at night, just your usual leisure night stroll, and in the darkness, all of a sudden, you start hearing a woman weeping. You want to help out someone who's crying, so stressed out that they're weeping. So you
Not
should.
me.
I mean, you should help, but she's at the edge of the street with the moonlight shining on her, and you just see this woman dressed in a white dress with her black hair
Nope.
covering her face, and you're still hearing this weep as you start to approach. Out of nowhere, you just catch her eye, and everything just stops. It's silent, and she goes after you. No, thank you. That's too much for me. I'm just gonna go running away. I couldn't, after that, no. But anyways, considering it's spooky season, we're gonna be doing a deep dive on La Llorona just to see the origins, because, I don't really know where this is coming from other than it's a lady from the olden days of Mexico, I guess. Okay, so yeah, let's see where she comes from. Just in case anyone is wondering, you can see our full source list on our website, cupofjoewithjoe.com. Let's get started. The first possible origin is made out of 3 short stories based on the Aztec goddesses. Cihuacotl, Toltec fertility goddess. These were the Mexica predecessors. Coatlicue, Mexica fertility goddess. And Chalchihuatlucue. Cihuacotl is known as the goddess of fertility and the mother of my ancestors, the Mexicas. She is said to be snake-like, the snake which symbolizes fertility, and is described as a savage beast and an evil omen who would appear at night weeping and wailing. She is also described as an omen of war, which is likely where the evil omen part comes from. In this story, she predicted that the Aztecs were about to go into war, coinciding with the arrival of the conquistadors. She gave a warning to her children so that they could prepare for this event, but in the end, she knew they would be defeated by the foreigners, so she just wept for their loss.
So she gave up.
I mean, yeah, I guess, yeah, she didn't do anything other than be like, hey, FYI, here they come. Story number 2. In a codex written later by Dominican friar Diego Duran, he writes about goddess Coatlicue. Some have used her interchangeably with Cihuacotl, but they're slightly different, so for the purposes of this episode, we'll consider them to be different goddesses.
So these are Mexica goddesses?
Yeah. Although...
And one of them is evil.
I mean, they're both fertility goddesses, so are they evil? I don't think so. Okay, so she is described as an old woman with a snake skirt. So the first one, which was Cihuacotl, she was snake-like, but then, and that was one from the Toltec. Then the one from the Mexicas, Coatlicue, she has a snake skirt. Although Duran describes her as the ugliest and dirtiest of the goddesses and looked like something that came straight out of hell.
The one that wears the skirt?
Yeah, it's just so rude. Anyways, Coatlicue was a priestess who was in charge of maintaining the shrine on top of the legendary sacred mountain Coatepec. One day, as she was sweeping, a feather or a ball of feathers, it's depending on what you're reading, but a feather descended from the heavens. She found them so beautiful that she decided to hold a feather close to her chest. Coatlicue continued with her chores, but once she was done, she was looking for her feather and just couldn't find it. After she realized she miraculously became pregnant by the feather.
Ew, it went inside her.
I don't know. Emerged to her uterus. Her sons did not appreciate it. So she actually had 400 Huitznawa, which are basically 400 beings that represent the southern stars. And they were just so enraged by this outcome that they decided that their mother dishonored them and that she needed to pay for what she had done.
For obviously, being pregnant?
The feather impregnates her, and she's like, they just got really angry.
Okay.
Disgrace, you know? Fortunately, one of the Huitznawa decided to warn the unborn god of war, Huitzilopochtli. So before they could attack, he sprang from his mother's womb, fully grown and armed, and protected his mother. I don't know. Sounds horrifying and pretty cool at the same time.
It's kind of cool.
Well, but that's the story of Coatlicue. But why is she related to La Llorona? Well, her son is at war because he is the god of war. She sits there waiting for his return. The time he is away, she's just weeping and just hoping for his return, basically.
But he just leapt out of the womb, ready to fight. I'm pretty sure he's going to be okay.
Probably, but you never know. Okay, and the third story. Lastly, Chalchihuitlicue. She was the goddess of the waters and either the wife or sister of the rain god Tlaloc. She terrorized and was feared by everyone. She was said to overturn boats and drown anyone who reached her waters. In order to appease her, ceremonies were made in her honor and involved sacrificing children. Apparently, the more the children cried, the more successful the sacrifice. This story felt more like a stretch to me in relations to La Llorona, though. She is basically linked to her because of the sacrifices. But while La Llorona drowned her kids, and that is evil, don't get me wrong, this goddess just seemed way more excited to be with a frightened child who's about to die.
She's taking pleasure in killing these kids and making sure that they endure as much pain as possible.
Yeah. I didn't like it. Yeah. Apparently, that's one of the origin stories for La Llorona, but I didn't like it. So, what did you think of the first set of origin stories?
I think I like the second the best. It's kind of a nice, almost fantasy fairy tale-esque story, and kind of seems, as crazy as it sounds, getting impregnated by a feather, it seems like the less outlandish.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I mean, the third one, there's a lot of crazy people out there that enjoy killing either people, kids, adults, whatever. But I don't see the relation to La Llorona. It seems like there's more evil women out in the world right now than comparable to that story, the third story, than La Llorona.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I agree. I prefer the second story. That's the best one out of there. And it just seemed to fit better with La Llorona. But either way, a lot of people like to put the Aztec goddesses against or compare them with La Llorona because it's relating to children and stuff like that. But it just...
I don't see the connection too much.
I agree. But This moves us towards our second origin story, which I guess is technically our fourth.
I would say it's the fourth one.
Yeah. But this is also based on the Aztecs, not Aztec goddesses, but these are actual people. So the second possible origin story starts with Malinali, or as she is better known as, Malintzin.
It's kind of a nice name.
I know, right?
Has a ring to it.
I know. I was just like, maybe we should name our daughter Malintzin. But
Malinali.
No. But I don't know. We'll go through the story and we'll see.
Okay.
Malintzin was the eldest child of a Nawa nobility, and she was known as a lively girl. And while she may have had a nice life to start with, she was eventually enslaved, and she was around 8 or 9 years old when that happened. Some sources mention that she was sold by her family after her parents had a son, but yeah, there's just no real records of what actually happened in her childhood. So from here on out, her life changed drastically. At this time, Malintzin was not able to do anything except do housework for those who enslaved her, and may have possibly been forced to perform sex work as well, but that's also not confirmed. Throughout her life, she was sold several times and learned both Yucatec and Nahuatl, the languages of the Mayan and Aztec people. So, I mean, you can tell, like, she was very well, had a lot of value. Specifically, she spoke High Nahuatl, which supports her claim to noble birth. And like I said, this is significant because it brings forth a higher value for her. So at the start of Hernan Cortez's conquest of Mexico, when he arrived to the city of Pontonchan, the city leaders tried to placate him by gifting him 20 indigenous women. One of those women was Malintzin, who Cortez originally gifted to one of his noblemen who served under him. He eventually realized she was fluent in 2 major languages of the Yucatan Peninsula. Since he needed someone who spoke the language and was privy to the culture, he decided to take her back. She quickly learned Spanish and became extremely vital for Cortez. I mean, she knew literally every language that he needed.
What do you call someone that knows 2 languages?
Bilingual.
Yeah, she's bilingual.
Mm-hmm.
An ancient bilingual Latin American.
Mm-hmm. She was essentially someone he could trust and knew everything he needed to know. Because of her role, she was called Doña, or Lady, by those surrounding Cortez, and Malintzin by the Aztecs, which is a combination of her name and an Aztec honorific. She appears in every illustration of Cortez when he meets with indigenous leaders and nobility, and sometimes she is showed negotiating on her own. So, I mean, she was powerful. Moctezuma even addressed all of his letters to her. Moctezuma, like the Aztec emperor.
So she's like the assistant to one of the most powerful people in Latin America of the time, Hernan Cortez.
Yeah. But, I mean, it just sounds so crazy considering, like that was his slave, and she became, like, she went all the way to the top. Which not to say that she's being treated the best.
You have to be pretty smart to work your way up from slavery to being basically the assistant. And that's a hard thing to do nowadays, working your way up, like in a normal corporate job. But back then, working your way up from slavery,
impossible.
Yeah. Getting anything outside of slavery as a slave, it was just a dream for most people, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
That was their life. That's all they would know.
Yep. Yeah. So she was a pivotal piece for Cortez's conquest, since with her help, he was able to make alliances and uncover plots to betray the Spanish. After all of this, people viewed her as the woman who brought down the Aztec Empire, and her name became synonymous to betrayal. Yeah, so we cannot name our daughter Malintzin.
Yeah.
From then on, she was known as La Malinche, which means traitor.
Or you can translate it as the baddie.
No, I don't think so. Once Tenochtitlan was conquered, Malintzin stayed with Cortés and had a son, Martín Cortés, in 1522. He is classified as the first mestizo, which was basically a status symbol at this point. Although, I'm just gonna say this is not historically accurate. It was not the first baby.
What's a mestizo?
A mestizo is basically when a Spanish person and a native had a baby.
Oh, that probably happened the first time that Spaniards landed on any Latin American soil.
Yeah. So definitely not the first one, but
this is the first officially recognized mestizo baby.
Yes, exactly.
Martín.
Yeah, Martín. In 1524, while Cortés and Malintzin were in what is now Honduras to quell a rebellion, Cortés arranged for her to marry Juan Jaramillo, one of Cortés's captains. So, I mean, he had no loyalty. He had no loyalty towards her. And come to find out, he did this because his wife was said to arrive from Spain.
Oh, so there's a chance that he had some romantic relationship with Malinche.
I mean, he definitely had something.
He's trying to get rid of his side chick before the wife came home and found out what was going on.
Exactly. Yeah. But still, she was a slave. She's still a slave at this point.
Yeah, she's still a slave, but she seems smart enough that she could get Hernan Cortés in trouble if she wanted to.
Yeah, for sure. Regardless, once she married Juan, Cortés left with his wife and son to Spain, and Malintzin never saw her son again. But with this marriage, she was elevated to the status of a free Spanish noblewoman and the mother of the mestizo race, which was a status symbol because,
Sounds powerful.
Yeah, it was powerful. So now that we know the background, let's see why she is said to be an origin story of La Llorona. The legend goes that Malintzin made Cortés fall in love with her and eventually became someone he heavily relied on to complete his conquest of Mexico. Eventually, they had a son together, Martín. Once Hernán Cortés was done with his conquest of Mexico, he decided to go back to Spain, and he took his son with him. She didn't do anything to stop him from taking their son, and from then on, she was known as La Malinche, which means traitor, or people have interpreted as bad mother. Her actions were interpreted as someone who does not know how to take care of her child and is taken by temptation and pleasure of the flesh.
Well, as smart as she was and as much power as she had, she was still considered below Hernan Cortés. And her original status was slavery, or her original status was being a slave. So it's kind of difficult to go against Hernan Cortés.
Yeah. He's like the most powerful person there. So
yeah,
you can't just go.
Hernan Cortés has Moctezuma. So Hernan Cortés had soldiers at his
call.
Yeah, at his disposal, and he pretty much also controlled Moctezuma, the Aztec emperor. So who is a slave to go against Hernan Cortés? That's kind of difficult. And who knows what the storybooks write. Maybe to make her look bad and make Hernan Cortés look like a hero, but...
No, yeah, all of this, the history that we're reading is basically by the Catholic priests that were with... I don't know if they were with Hernan Cortés, but they definitely wrote the story based on their point of view and the point of view of Hernan Cortés.
Well, Catholic priests come from Spain, and they're going to favor anything that is Spain.
Yeah.
So they're biased, and they probably are just twisting the story. I'm sure that she probably did do something to get her son back, Martín, but...
Yeah, we don't know what she did or if she tried anything or anything.
Maybe she tried something, and Hernan Cortés used brute force to go against her will, and they just erased that from the history books to make Hernan Cortés look better. Yeah,
for sure. But from there, the meaning of La Llorona takes on a meaning of a mother who does not fulfill the traditional duties of a mother and is condemned to a lifetime of suffering and to roam this world forever with this heavy guilt. And yeah, that's the story of Malintzin, and those are the origin stories. I think for sure that Malintzin is the better origin story for sure. I mean, it is like based on actual people, and it is way better tie, has a better tie to the story, because she does try to get with Hernan Cortés, which is a wealthy Spaniard, right? She has one son with him, but still, he takes the kids away, or he takes his son away, and is left to be with this other guy, which she does end up having more children with this guy. I know at least for sure a daughter. So maybe she did fall in love with him, but still, like, that story is way more related to La Llorona than the Aztec goddesses, for sure.
Yeah. It seems more believable, more Mexican. And
FYI, it's said to be from Mexico, but if I went on a rabbit hole, it could be from... I started going on a rabbit hole, and like, it could be from other places, but we stayed in Mexico.
I wonder what countries all in Latin America are connected to this story.
That'll be our next deep dive. Maybe next year. Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us. Hope you liked this episode. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you would like to hear next. Thanks.
Thanks for having me.
Peace out.